Harry is not the greatest and most intelligent bunny on the planet, and I've said this many times. And quite frankly, he very rarely engages brain before he engages mouth. And to say something like that, which to the Americans, Elvis was an icon, and he was an icon to a lot of pop rock music fans. So to say that is just absolutely ridiculous. It almost sounds like attention seeking. In the hope that somebody is going to have a go at him, that he can have a go back.
There is a particular kind of courage in saying out loud what everyone else is thinking, and when Dickie Arbiter speaks, he does not whisper. Former press secretary to the late Queen Elizabeth II and to King Charles III, this is a man who spent nearly 5 decades deep inside the machinery of the British royal family. Dickie Arbiter has seen it all: the pomp, the protocol, the scandals, the cover-ups, the marriages that worked, and the ones that crashed and burned in spectacular fashion. And when Dickie Arbiter turns his attention to what Meghan Markle is doing with her children, posting their images on Instagram, while simultaneously lecturing the world about online child safety, photographing the backs of their heads to push products, using their royal titles to sell candles and clothing lines, he does not hold back, not even a little. Because here is what is really going on behind that carefully curated Instagram grid. Behind every soft focus shot of a tiny hand, every child's silhouette against a California sunset, every birthday post loaded with hashtags and brand energy, there is a cold commercial calculation being made.
Meghan Markle just doesn't seem to understand that. If she's going to stand on this issue of internet safety, the first and foremost place that you must see this is on Meghan Markle's own Instagram page, which she refuses to do. She's trying to monetize everything, and it's impossible not to believe that Meghan Markle knows that posting her children generally gives her a bit more engagement.
A deliberate, relentless strategy to squeeze every last drop of value from 2 young children who have absolutely no idea they are being used as marketing assets. And the question Dickie Arbiter is asking, the question millions of people worldwide are asking, is this: where exactly does a mother's love end and the brand manager's spreadsheet begin? The story of Meghan Markle and her children is not new, but it has reached a level of brazen, unapologetic contradiction that even her most loyal defenders are struggling to ignore. We are watching a duchess, a woman who flew to Geneva to address the World Health Organization about the dangers of social media for children, return home, and within hours post a fresh photo of her daughter Lilibet on Instagram to mark her 5th birthday. 5 years old, a child with no voice, no agency, no ability to consent to being placed in front of millions of strangers. And when challenged, Meghan's spokesperson issued a statement to Newsweek so twisted in its logic it deserves a closer look.
This is another example, frankly, of her rank hypocrisy, going to Switzerland to talk about child safety online and then a few days later issuing pictures of her own children. It doesn't matter whether you can see their faces or not. The fact is she's using those to build her brand whilst telling the rest of us that we shouldn't use our children, or you should be cautious if we did. Now, I don't buy the explanation from her people, because I just think it's rank hypocrisy.
The statement drew a line between sharing moments from her life and exposing her children to public scrutiny. By obscuring their faces, the spokesperson argued, Meghan was actually living out the very principle she preaches, giving children privacy, agency, and protection. The statement went further, saying this behavior reflects the message she delivered in Geneva. Let that sink in. The woman who flew to Switzerland to warn the world about the exploitation of children online on a trip where, by most accounts, barely a handful of people showed up to hear her speak, came straight home and posted her kids on the very platforms she had just condemned. And her team's defense? Because you cannot see their faces, it does not count. Dickie Arbiter sees it very differently. And frankly, so does anyone paying attention. To understand the full picture, we need to go back to Geneva. Meghan appeared at a World Health Organization event to speak about child safety online, positioned as a major moment of global advocacy. The reality, for those who followed the story closely, was far more modest than the fanfare suggested. The streets outside were not lined with supporters.
If you're so concerned about the anonymity of your children, don't photograph them and don't put them online. And if you want to photograph them, put them in an album, keep them on your phone, keep them on your computer, but don't put them online. It's no good putting them online and then expecting anonymity, because it just ain't going to happen.
The hall was not packed. The reaction both locally and globally was underwhelming in a way that spoke volumes about how much influence the Duchess of Sussex actually carries on the world stage right now. But Meghan pressed on. She spoke with real passion about protecting children from the predatory side of social media. She talked about the vulnerability of young people, the dangers of digital footprints, the responsibility sitting on the shoulders of both parents and platforms. By all accounts, it was a polished performance. Whatever else you want to say about Meghan Markle, the woman can deliver a speech. And then she went home to Montecito and posted her children on Instagram. Her team wants you to believe this is perfectly consistent, that the obscured faces make all the difference. But here is what law enforcement professionals and child safety experts will actually tell you, and this was raised directly in the conversation we are drawing from today, partially revealing children's images.
Meghan and Harry own their kids' names. They own the domain names, they own the emails, they own everything else. When turning Archwell Foundation into Archwell Philanthropies, they said it was for a family thing so that their children could be involved.
Teasing what they look like, building a will they, won they mystery around their faces can actually increase attention from exactly the kind of people you least want paying attention. The mystery, in other words, can be more dangerous than transparency. For a certain category of obsessive follower, that kind of teasing is not protection, it is an invitation. And yet the posts keep coming. And with every single post, something is being sold: a lifestyle, a brand, a version of motherhood that is aspirational, curated, and commercially loaded in ways that go way beyond the sentimental. Rank hypocrisy. Those are not words Duncan Larkham, former royal editor of The Sun, a man who has covered this family for decades and met Prince Harry personally on multiple occasions, uses lightly. Duncan Larkham is not given to exaggeration. He is precise, measured, and deeply knowledgeable about how the royal family operates and how the media machine around it functions. And when he looks at what Meghan is doing, his verdict is clear. Because here is what her spokesperson's carefully worded statement simply cannot get around. It does not matter whether the faces are hidden or not. What matters is the intent. These images are being deployed with a specific commercial and reputational purpose. They go up at moments of maximum strategic value, on birthdays, at key milestones, ahead of product launches, in the wake of negative coverage that needs to be buried.
The more we learn about Meghan Markle, the more we realise that she doesn't get out of bed unless there's some sort of profit to be made or money to earn. And she'll use her children ruthlessly, just like she's used her husband incredibly ruthlessly, and the royal family ruthlessly, to build her brand, build her image, get her truth across.
The timing of every post is not accidental. Nothing Meghan Markle does publicly is accidental. Think about that. Every single image released of her children has been considered, timed, framed, and approved. The lighting, the composition, the caption, the hashtags, the platform, the moment of release. This is not a mother spontaneously sharing a sweet family moment. This is a content strategy, and the content happens to be her own children. Duncan Larkham asks the most devastatingly simple question of all: why release any images at all? If the concern is genuinely about safety, if the principle is genuinely about protection, the answer is obvious. You do not post them. You keep them in a private album. You share them with family. You do not put them on Instagram, where millions of strangers, some deeply troubled, will spend hours picking apart every pixel. The fact that the posts keep coming and that every single one generates engagement, revenue, and brand reinforcement tells you everything you need to know about the real motivation here. And there it is.
When Meghan was growing up, she dreamed of Hollywood stardom and being a big person on a big stage. When Harry was growing up, he dreamed of being anonymous and not recognized everywhere he goes. The reality is, and it's painful to watch from someone that's dealt with Harry since he was a teenager. Meghan is living her dream. Harry is living his nightmare.
The simplest, most irrefutable argument against everything Meghan's spokesperson put to Newsweek. You cannot post your children online and claim to be protecting their privacy at the same time. It just does not work that way. The moment any image of a child lands on a public platform with millions of followers, that child is no longer anonymous. They become a public figure by proxy. They become content. They become data points fed into an algorithm designed to push them toward the demographic most likely to engage. And on Instagram, engagement means reach, influence, and cold, hard commercial value. Let us talk about exactly how that value has been extracted, because this is not theoretical, this is documented. At one point, Meghan had a Shop My Page function on her Instagram where followers could purchase children's clothing that Archie and Lilibet had been photographed wearing, with a cut of every sale going directly to Meghan.
Meghan is never a spare part in anything. She wants to be number one. She wants to be number 100. She wants to be number one right through to a million. She wants to be the only one. Unfortunately, the world is going to come crashing down on her one of these days, because people have been seeing through her for a long time.
Her own children were, in the most literal sense, walking advertisements. When the criticism hit, the function disappeared, but the principle had already been established. Then there is the as-ever brand, the jams, preserves, and honey marketed with the strong suggestion that they are lovingly made in her Montecito kitchen, with her children happily pottering around her feet. The kitchen scenes, the kids glimpsed at the edges of the frame, the wholesome domestic picture carefully built to make you feel that buying Meghan Markle's jam is somehow buying into this beautiful family life. It is sophisticated brand building, and the children are right at the center of it. And then there is the candle.
She's using their name and likeness and royal titles to sell a candle, and they're not even old enough to consent to being used in that way.
The candle that carried the names of Archie and Lilibet, a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old who cannot read a contract, cannot grasp intellectual property, and cannot consent to having their names and royal titles attached to a commercial product. But their names and titles, it was correctly calculated, would sell, so they were used. They also own the domain names. Let that land for a second. 2 young children had their names registered as commercial assets before they were old enough to tie their own shoelaces. The entire monetization infrastructure was built around these kids from the very start. And the justification offered that it was a family thing so the children could be involved sounds warm and inclusive right up until you actually think about it for more than a few seconds. There is a clear difference between involving your children in your life and pulling them into your commercial empire. One is parenting, the other is something else entirely. Dickie Arbiter spent 5 years working directly alongside the late Princess Diana. He was there when William was born. He was there when Harry was born. He watched this family from the inside, up close, through the chaos of the early 90s and the heartbreak that followed. And perhaps more than anyone else speaking on this story,
never complain, never explain is the answer to that. If you complain about everything that is written about you, everything that is said about you, everything that is published about you, you fall into a trap where if what is published, said, or written, whatever, is wrong, the question comes back, well, okay, if that's wrong, what is right? And it puts self-perpetuating and it never ends.
he understands what it truly means to raise children in the public eye and what the responsible, ethical version of that actually looks like. Because Diana, for all the complexity of her relationship with the press, had one clear principle when it came to her boys: she wanted them to have as normal a childhood as possible. She took them to theme parks and McDonald's. She made sure they understood that not everyone lived the way they did. She was fiercely protective of their private lives, even while navigating her own very public story. And there is a reason that William and Harry, despite their very different paths in life, both came out of childhood with a genuine warmth and relatability that the public connected with. That did not happen by accident. It happened because their mother fought fiercely to protect their humanity. Now, contrast that with what Archie and Lilibet experience. Their faces may be hidden, but their existence, their birthdays, their clothing, their names, their titles are all deployed as brand assets on a regular, calculated basis. They show up in the narrative not as children who deserve protection, but as proof points for a lifestyle brand.
Meghan Markle said social media companies exploit children for clicks and Meghan Markle, while at the same time admitting that she exploits her own children for social media clicks and money. She is a joke on this topic, and no one with active brain cells will ever take her seriously unless she lives by what she preaches. But she's too addicted to exploiting herself and her family for clicks and money to do anything else.
And Dickie Arbiter, who knew their father when he was just a small boy himself, finds this deeply troubling. She doesn't get out of bed unless there's profit to be made. Think about what it means to apply that logic to motherhood. Because every public act of parenting Meghan performs, every birthday post, every kitchen scene, every glimpse of small hands in the frame is, by this reading, a commercial decision, not a spontaneous expression of love, a calculated move in a long-running brand strategy. And the most chilling part of Dickie Arbiter's observation is the word he uses: ruthlessly. Not carelessly, not naively, ruthlessly, with full awareness of what is being done and exactly why. The same ruthlessness, he points out, applied to her husband, a man who gave up his family, his country, his military career, and his entire identity. The same ruthlessness applied to a royal family that welcomed her warmly, only to find that warmth used against them in interviews and a memoir that caused damage still being felt today. These are not coincidental patterns. This is a method, and the children are simply the latest application of it.
As her clout dwindled, as people lost interest in what she and Harry had going on, she was going to move to the next generation. That was the final card she had to play, Archie and Lilibet.
And the pattern gets more obvious over time. Whenever Meghan's other ventures underperform, whenever a project fails to land, whenever the cultural conversation drifts away from her, the children appear, reliable as clockwork. The podcast that lost its audience, the children appeared. The Netflix series that got mixed reviews, the children appeared. The As Ever brand launch that, by multiple accounts, fell short of its projected commercial success, the children appeared, right on cue, in the kitchen, in the Montecito sunshine, wrapped in that soft focus world of aspirational domesticity she has carefully built around herself. We have watched this play out in real time. The children's presence in Meghan's public content has increased in direct proportion to the decline in her other commercial fortunes. As her brand has struggled, as her cultural relevance has wavered, as audiences for her various projects have proved disappointingly small, the children have been called upon to carry more and more of the weight. In the most brutal commercial terms, they are her most bankable asset, and she knows it.
I agree with Dickie completely. Harry is not the sharpest tool in the toolbox, and sometimes things he says seem very off the cuff and not thought through properly.
Because here is the uncomfortable truth underneath all of this. In a world where Meghan Markle is no longer a working royal, where she cannot trade on proximity to the crown, where that association has lost much of its shine, what does she actually have to offer? By Hollywood's own assessment, she is not a compelling enough screen presence to anchor a major project. By the evidence of her recent ventures, she is not a cultural innovator carving out a new lane. She is a woman famous primarily for having married a prince, and the most powerful reminder she can offer the world that the prince is still there, that the royal connection still exists, that the fairy tale is still alive, is the children. Archie, seventh in line to the throne, Lilibet, who carries the name of the late Queen. These are not just Meghan's children. These are living, breathing proof that she is still part of the story. Meghan is living her dream. Harry is living his nightmare. There is something almost unbearably sad about that coming from a man who has known Harry since he was a teenager. Duncan Larkham has watched this transformation up close, the boy who just wanted to be left alone.
I don't know why anybody takes so much notice of Meghan. She is a nobody. She is an actress from a soap who was written out of a soap that eventually came to an end, Hollywood wasn't galloping to her front door to offer her parts. They're still not offering her parts, even though now she's a duchess. If you want to be a duchess, behave like a duchess and earn the title.
Who felt the weight of his royal identity as a burden, slowly becoming the public-facing half of a brand that depends entirely on the very visibility he has always found so painful. And somewhere inside that nightmare, his children are being photographed. It would be easy to frame Harry as entirely passive, a victim swept along by forces he cannot control, and there is certainly some truth in that. The man who spoke so passionately in Spare about his desire for privacy, who built his entire public identity around the pain of media intrusion, is now married to a woman whose primary communication tool is Instagram. The contradiction is extraordinary. But let us be straight about something. Harry is not a child. He is a 41-year-old man. He sees the posts. He sees the birthday photographs. He sees the kitchen content. He sees the candle bearing his children's names, and he has not stopped any of it. Whether that is because he agrees, because he has been convinced it is acceptable, or because he has simply stopped fighting battles he cannot win inside his own marriage, we cannot say for certain. But his silence is its own form of complicity. What we do know, from those who have observed this couple closely, is that Harry's relationship with public life has always been the complete opposite of Meghan's. He finds it genuinely painful.
The biggest part of all of this, I believe, is going to be when these children do grow up and they get bigger, they're going to see the manipulation that their mother is doing. They're going to call their mother out later in life, because Meghan is trying to use her children in a way that is not honest. She is trying to represent something that is clearly being manipulated. And you know, that's what people resent.
He craved the anonymity that was never truly available to him, and the evidence that this tension is taking a serious personal toll is visible if you know exactly where to look. We have seen Harry alone at a polo field. We have seen Harry at a dinner for Jose Andres without Meghan anywhere in sight. A dinner that Meghan, who has spent considerable effort positioning herself as America's great culinary enthusiast through her television series, might have been expected to attend with enormous enthusiasm. She was not there. These absences accumulate, and they tell a story about a couple whose lives are drifting apart in ways that neither of them seems to have fully faced yet. She wants to be the only one, and Harry, who grew up as the spare, who spent his entire childhood in his brother's shadow, has somehow ended up in a marriage where he is the spare all over again. Not the priority, not the focus, the supporting act, the legitimizing presence, the man whose royal blood makes everything Meghan does more valuable and more newsworthy. Because without Harry, Meghan is an actress from a cancelled legal drama. With Harry, she is a duchess with a direct line to the most famous family on the planet, and she has absolutely no intention of letting that go, which is exactly why the children matter so much. Archie and Lilibet are the living proof that the marriage is real, that the fairy tale has not collapsed, that Harry is still present and still committed. Every photograph of those children is, on some level, a photograph of Harry's continued investment in this life, and every single one of those photographs is worth money.
Catherine, when she was in Italy, she was turning up in cars on her own. I mean, just a driver, getting out, nobody with her, and just immediately going over to the crowds, chatting with the kids, chatting with the grown-ups. She's got it. She's got the stuff. She knows how to do this. And the secret is naturalness. Whereas Meghan and Harry have got to put on a display. Look how important we are.
Not old enough to consent. That phrase should stop every reasonable person cold. Because we are not talking about parents who made a slightly clumsy decision in the messy business of raising children in the modern world. We are talking about the systematic commercial use of young children who have no capacity to understand, evaluate, or agree to what is being done with their names and images. Children enrolled into a brand strategy without their knowledge, without their understanding, and without their consent. And here is what makes this particularly hard to brush aside. The very people who built this strategy are simultaneously presenting themselves as among the loudest advocates for children's rights in the digital space. Meghan did not travel to Geneva as a private citizen with a personal concern. She went as a public figure, as an advocate, as someone positioning herself as a serious voice on child safety online. She wants policymakers, tech executives, and parents around the world to see her as someone with the moral authority to lead on this issue.
Meghan Markle put out more and more content connected to her children.
But you cannot have it both ways. You cannot present yourself as the world's great champion of children's digital safety while simultaneously enrolling your own children into a commercial content strategy that depends entirely on their public presence. The level of contradiction required to hold both positions at once is staggering, and it is not lost on anyone paying attention. And let us look at the commercial architecture for a moment, because this is not simply Meghan posting the occasional family photo and selling a few jars of jam. This is an integrated system. The Instagram posts drive engagement and follower growth. The follower growth increases her commercial value to brands and partners. The children's appearances within that content boost the emotional pull of every post, because children, particularly royal children, are extraordinarily powerful content. The engagement becomes data, the data becomes deals. The deals become money, and every single penny of that money flows directly from the original decision to make the children part of the brand. Never complain, never explain. It is one of the great guiding principles of the British royal family, and Dickie Arbiter has lived it, breathed it, and enforced it for decades. The logic is clean in its simplicity. If you respond to every criticism, you validate it. You signal that it has the power to hurt you. You invite the follow-up question, if that is wrong, what is right? And suddenly you are trapped in a loop with no exit. The late Queen never gave interviews explaining herself. She never dispatched spokespeople to defend her choices. She understood that the dignity of her position required a certain quiet confidence, not arrogance, but the unshakable assurance of someone who does not need external validation to know their own worth. It was a strategy that served her extraordinarily well for 70 years. Meghan does the precise opposite. Every criticism generates a response. Every unflattering story triggers a counter-narrative. When the question of her children on Instagram was raised, she did not simply continue living her life. She sent a spokesperson to Newsweek with a carefully constructed defense attempting to thread the needle between "I share moments from my life" and "I protect my children's privacy." The defense was so elaborate, so calculated, that it achieved the complete opposite of what was intended. Instead of burying the story, it extended it, amplified it, and handed it entirely new angles to be picked apart. Because the problem with being caught in a contradiction is that defending yourself only makes the contradiction more visible. If you were genuinely at peace with the balance you had struck between sharing and protecting, you would not need 3 paragraphs in Newsweek to explain it. You would simply live it. The living of it would be its own defense. The fact that an explanation was necessary tells you that somewhere, on some level, the contradiction is already recognized. And then, within hours of that careful, lawyerly statement being published, Meghan posted a birthday photograph of Lilibet. Too addicted to exploiting herself and her family for clicks and money to do anything else. That word addicted is carrying a lot of weight in that sentence. Because addiction implies compulsion. It implies the behavior continues even when the person knows it is harmful, even when they have publicly committed to doing better, even when the damage is visible to everyone around them. And there is something in that description that lands because the pattern we are watching, the posting, the defending, the posting again, does have that quality of compulsion to it. But here is the deeper point being made. No one paying close attention will take her seriously on this issue anymore. And that is the real damage, not just to Meghan's credibility on child safety, though that damage is considerable, but to the cause itself. Child safety online is not a trivial talking point. It is a serious, urgent, genuinely critical area of public debate and policy. And when a figure as contradicted as Meghan Markle plants herself as its champion, she does not elevate the issue. She diminishes it. She makes it easier to dismiss. She hands bad actors in the tech industry the perfect deflection. Look at the hypocrisy of your own advocates. That is the collateral damage of the brand strategy. That is what happens when personal ambition dresses itself up as public service. We have covered the commercial strategy. We have covered the hypocrisy. We have covered the contradictions and the cover stories. But there is a deeper dimension here that deserves its own focus, and it is this. What actually happens to Archie and Lilibet? These are real children. Archie is 7 years old. Lilibet is 5. They are growing up in Montecito, California, shielded from much of their family's public story, but not from all of it. They will, in time, discover the internet. They will encounter years of commentary, debates, controversies, and photographs. They will see themselves in images they never agreed to. They will read the arguments about their births, their titles, their parents' choices. They will understand gradually and then all at once the full scope of what was done in their names. And they will have questions. Here is the thing about using children as brand assets. Children grow up. And grown children have the full capacity to form their own views about what was done to them. They can feel used. They can feel that their childhood was not entirely their own. We have seen this play out in other famous families, the children of celebrities who, upon reaching adulthood, spoke with real clarity and no small amount of pain about what it meant to have been public property from birth. But Archie and Lilibet are not just any famous children, they are the grandchildren of a king. They carry titles connecting them to one of the oldest and most storied institutions in the world. Their heritage is extraordinary, and the question of whether that heritage will ever truly be available to them, whether the bridges their mother has burned can be rebuilt, whether they will one day walk into their grandfather's world and be genuinely welcomed, these are questions the current strategy makes harder, not easier to answer. The final card. That phrase is worth sitting with, because it carries a very specific implication. If the children are the final card, what does that tell us about the state of the hand being played? It tells us that everything else has already been tried. The interviews, the memoir, the Netflix series, the podcast, the lifestyle brand, the advocacy work, the humanitarian positioning, all of it deployed, and none of it delivering the kind of sustained, growing influence that was the original ambition. And so we arrive at the children, the final, irreplaceable, uniquely powerful asset that no amount of failed projects can touch. Because whatever else Meghan Markle may or may not have achieved, she has 2 children who are the grandchildren of the King of England, 2 children who carry names of enormous royal significance, 2 children whose very existence is a permanent, unbreakable connection to the House of Windsor. And as long as she controls the narrative around those children deciding what is seen, when, and how she holds a form of power that nothing else in her arsenal can replicate, that is the final card. And she is playing it. The palace, characteristically, has said nothing publicly about Meghan's Instagram strategy. Entirely consistent with the principle Dickie Arbiter described so clearly: never complain, never explain. The king does not issue statements about his daughter-in-law's social media choices. William and Catherine do not comment on photographs of their niece and nephew appearing on Instagram. The institution rises above it, as it always has. But that silence should not be mistaken for indifference. Those who know the royal family well understand that the palace watches, notes, and remembers. The pattern of behavior, the monetization of the Sussex brand, the commercial use of royal titles and connections, the deployment of children as content is all being carefully catalogued, and it will, in time, form part of a broader reckoning that is coming. Because King Charles, for all his well-documented desire to reconcile with his younger son, also presides over an institution with a 400-year history and a very clear sense of what it stands for. The sight of his grandchildren's names on a candle being sold on Instagram is not, one imagines, something that sits comfortably with him. The sight of their images being used to push a lifestyle brand is not something the palace considers consistent with the dignity of the royal name. And yet, because of his deep desire for reconciliation, because of his love for his son, because of the fundamental complexity of the family dynamics at play, Charles has not acted. William, by all informed accounts, has fewer such reservations. William has always had the measure of Meghan. He saw it early. He raised concerns early. And he has watched those concerns proved correct in ways that are both vindicating and deeply painful. William, who will one day be king, is not Charles. He does not share his father's attachment to the idea of reconciliation at any cost. William is, as those who know him well will tell you, considerably more clear-eyed about what has happened and what needs to happen next. Not the sharpest tool in the toolbox, and there is the heart of it. Because if Harry could see more clearly the long-term consequences of the path he and Meghan are on, one has to believe he would be deeply uncomfortable with what is unfolding. The man who has spoken so passionately about the trauma of a childhood spent in the public eye, about the damage media intrusion can do to a young person's sense of self, is allowing his children to be used as commercial content on the world's most powerful social media platform. The contradiction is so stark it almost defies explanation. Almost earn the title. That is the standard Dickie Arbiter, a man who has spent his life in service to the crown, who understands what royal duty actually looks like, what it demands, what it costs, applies. And by that standard, Meghan Markle falls comprehensively short, because here is what earning a royal title actually looks like. It looks like Catherine, Princess of Wales, visiting a cancer patient at a hospital and holding her hand while she rings a bell to celebrate her remission. It looks like a woman who has faced her own cancer diagnosis, emerging from that experience, not with a memoir and a streaming deal, but with a deeper, more authentic connection to the people she serves. It looks like standing in a hospital corridor and saying to a frightened husband, "I know exactly how you feel." It affects the whole family and meaning every word of it, not because it plays well on camera, but because it is simply true. We saw Catherine do exactly that recently. Beautifully, authentically, no advance announcement, no camera crew, no Instagram post. She simply went. She sat with a woman who was frightened and relieved in equal measure, and she was present genuinely, uncomplicated, without agenda. That is what earning a title looks like. And the contrast with Meghan's approach, the candle launches, the Instagram strategy, the lifestyle brand, the carefully curated glimpses of her children could not be more complete. The distance between the two is not simply a matter of personal style. It is a fundamental difference in character, in values, in what you believe your life is actually for. Dickie Arbiter is not alone in making this observation. It is the conclusion of virtually everyone who has watched this story unfold, from former royal press secretaries to royal editors to the millions of ordinary people who have followed closely and drawn their own conclusions. The title was available to Meghan Markle, the opportunity was extraordinary, and she chose to monetize it rather than honor it. There is a question hanging over all of this that becomes more pressing with every passing month. What does the future actually look like for Harry and Meghan in relation to the royal family? Because the strategy they are currently running, the monetization of the children, the brand building, the lifestyle content is entirely dependent on a continued connection to the royal world. The value of everything they do depends on that connection remaining visible, remaining alive, remaining emotionally resonant with the public. The moment it feels genuinely severed, the moment people simply accept that Harry is a private citizen in California and not a prince in exile, the entire commercial architecture collapses. And yet every move they make pulls them further from the very connection that sustains them. Every Instagram post that irritates the palace, every product launch attaching royal names to commercial goods, every statement requiring a spokesperson to defend the indefensible, each one chips away at the goodwill, the tolerance, the residual affection that makes any kind of quiet reconciliation possible. King Charles is not in the best of health. He is a man who has faced a serious cancer diagnosis and continues his path forward with characteristic stoicism and courage. By every account, Charles's deepest personal wish is to reconcile with his younger son before it is too late. That love has survived extraordinary provocation and continues to exist even now through the hurt, the anger, the bewilderment at what Harry has become. But even a father's love has limits. And what is being done with the children, with the royal connection, with the titles and the names, is testing those limits in ways that cannot simply be resolved with a warm embrace at an airport. They are going to call their mother out. That is a devastating prediction, and one that carries a very particular kind of sadness. Because however you feel about Meghan Markle, the children are innocent. Archie is 7, Lilibet is 5. They have done nothing wrong. They deserve a childhood. They deserve the chance to grow up with their identities intact, with their sense of self not entirely constructed around a commercial strategy, with the real possibility of genuine relationships with their grandfather, with their royal family, with the country whose name they carry. And the fear, the genuine, substantive fear that serious people are expressing, is that by the time these children are old enough to control their own stories, the damage will already be done. The content will already exist. The brand will already have been built. The years of childhood that should have been private, sacred, and entirely their own will already have been harvested. Step back from the Instagram posts, the candles, the spokesperson statements, and look at what this story is really about. It is about the collision of two fundamentally incompatible worlds. The institution of monarchy, with its centuries-old traditions of dignity, service, and self-restraint crashing headfirst into the modern celebrity machine, with its relentless hunger for content, engagement, and commercial yield. Meghan Markle stepped into one of those worlds and has spent every day since trying to force the other onto it. She wanted the titles, the heritage, the global platform, the gravitas that comes from the crown, and she also wanted the Instagram presence, the lifestyle brand, the celebrity friendships, the streaming deals, the speaking fees. She believed, or more accurately calculated, that she could have both. What she failed to understand, and what the royal family understood with complete clarity, is that you simply cannot. The two things are mutually exclusive. You cannot be a working member of the British royal family and also be a content creator monetizing your children's images on social media. The institution does not permit it. The dignity of the position does not survive it. And the public, the vast, instinct-driven, intelligent public, can feel the inauthenticity from a great distance. Catherine and William understand this in their bones. When Catherine speaks about the early years program, it is not a content strategy, it is the extension of years of genuine research, genuine engagement, genuine passion. When William speaks about conservation or mental health, it is not a brand proposition, it is the expression of things he actually cares about. And the public, unerringly, can tell the difference between conviction and performance. Meghan's performance, for all its technical polish, carries a hollowness that the audience cannot quite shake, and the use of the children has made that hollowness more visible, not less. Because real, unconditional love for your children does not look like this. It does not involve spokespeople and Instagram strategies and candles bearing their names. Real love, the kind every parent understands, is quiet, fierce, and private. The royal family has always known this. Dickie Arbiter has spent 50 years upholding it. And Meghan Markle has spent 8 years proving she cannot. And ultimately, this all comes down to one thing: character, not strategy. Not brand management, not the rights and wrongs of obscuring a child's face on Instagram. Character. The thing that Dickie Arbiter, Duncan Larkham, and every serious observer of this story keeps returning to because it is the only lens through which the full pattern of behavior makes consistent sense. Character is not revealed in the big, carefully staged public moments. It is revealed in the small decisions. The decision to send a spokesperson to Newsweek rather than simply living by your stated principles. The decision to post your child's birthday photograph hours after defending their privacy. The decision to put your children's names on a product and sell it. The decision, repeated endlessly, to say one thing and do another. These decisions accumulate, and over time they build an image that no amount of beautiful photography or polished advocacy can erase. The image of someone for whom principle is not a guide to action but a marketing tool. Someone for whom values are not held but performed. Someone who has studied what authenticity looks like but never quite grasped what authenticity is. Dickie Arbiter has met genuinely authentic people. He worked alongside one for 30 years. He watched her stand near the gates of Buckingham Palace and say to the residents of a bombed community, "Now I can look you in the eye." He watched her meet thousands of ordinary people across 7 decades of public service, and he saw in her something no strategy could manufacture: a genuine, unperformed care for the people she served. And when he looks at what Meghan Markle is doing with her children, her platform, and the extraordinary privilege that marrying into that family gave her, his verdict is delivered with the quiet authority of a man who knows exactly what he is talking about. Earn the title, or give it back. One day sooner, perhaps, than any of us expect, Archie and Lilibet will be old enough to search their own names online, old enough to find the candles, the Instagram posts, the spokesperson statements, the years of debate, old enough to form their own views about what was done in their names. And when that day comes, what do you think they will feel? And here is the question we want to leave you with. Do you think the relationship between Archie and Lilibet and their royal family, their grandfather the king, their cousins George, Charlotte, and Louis, could ever truly be repaired? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one, and we genuinely want to know what you think. If this video hit home for you, please give it a like. It helps more people find this content and keeps these conversations going. Share it with someone who you know would find it just as fascinating. And if you are not yet subscribed, right now is the perfect moment. We are here every day, covering stories that matter. We will see you in the next one.